Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of Tech Predictions. Today we're doing something very different, and I'm being joined by Jake as we go over. This is really a proxy decks, but the new Star Wars Unlimited card game, which is something that we tried out back at Gen Con, was super excited for it to come out, and it does come out this weekend. I think pre-release is actually as this video is being dropped, it's happening. So yeah, we're super excited to get the real stuff in. But yeah, Jake, what's going on?
What's going on, man?
This because didn't get a chance to play at Gen Con, but me, Nick, and Jimmy did, and it was a game changer when it comes to TCGs.
Yeah, you guys came back from. I had to leave the con a day early, and you guys came back singing this game's praises, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." Because I'm not really a big Star Wars guy, but you guys started explaining some of the mechanics and like how things work, and I was like, "Oh, they're it really seems like they're trying something fresh and new." And then after getting my hands on the game, I'll probably say this 1,000 times while we cover this game, but it feels like that the designers of the game looked around the TCG market and thought to themselves, okay, what's working for these companies and what isn't working? What is engaging gameplay and what is just like painful to sit through? And the way this game works, there's a ton of back and forth, and ultimately, I'm really excited to play this game both with my friends and at competitive events.
Yes. So let's kind of go over the game right now. I do have it set to 200 speed. This was, I think, we've been testing out here, and the last game we played was a lot faster. This game technically took us about 35 minutes. We did have people sitting around us, but the game, you start with a base and you start with a leader. The leader is in their unawakened form, is a way of saying it. It's just they're just a leader to do action things if they apply. Now, some leaders don't have actions. Like in my case, Boba Fett has what you would call an auto that will proc when one of your battle cards leaves play, and but yours is an action. And the way the game works, it works in phases. So, at the beginning of the game, you draw 6 cards. There is a mulligan, hard 6. And then you take 2 of your cards, you put them to your resources, which is kind of like for Dragon Ball terms, your energy, or Magic terms, your mana, or your lands. And then you determine whoever goes first, and then that player does an action. Either you play a card, you attack of a card, you do some form of action, and then the next player will do their action. So it's more of a back and forth instead of like I'll play my whole thing out, then you play your whole thing out, and then
Yeah,
when go on,
I was gonna say you kind of like share a turn with your
yeah,
opponent. It's really cool.
and then if you get to a point where you feel like you don't want to do any more actions, you can call initiative if it hasn't already been called, and that way at the beginning of the next round you will go first instead. So like right here, I just took initiative instead. I didn't feel like playing anything else. And some cards in this situation, like I have a card in this space. There's 2 different areas for starters too. So there's your base, and then there's an area for ground units, and there's an area for space units or spaceships, whatever. And
Yeah, you. Yeah, I was gonna say you can see the spaceships towards the bottom half of the screen, and then up top you've got like Yoda and some more ground units.
yeah, and the idea is to destroy your opponent's base. Now, there are different types of bases. There's your generic 30k bases, they have no actions at all. And then there's 25 health point bases, which have a epic action. Epic action is going to be done once per game. And leaders have an epic action, which is typically proc when you have, I think all the leaders is when you have X amount of resources, you can then play the leader into the battle area in ready position. So that way it's ready to go. Um, this card game basis goes out the idea of the quote unquote somebody's sickness. So when you play cards into the battle area, they come into play exhausted. I think is what their terminology is for this game. Now some cards will have keywords called ambush. They'll play and then they will ready. So then that way you can do something with them afterwards. And you can attack cards in the ready position, in the exhaust position. There is nothing there. But some cards, which whenever Jake will more or less awaken his leader using his epic action, there will be effects that like
Prevent your
Sentinel.
opponent from like, yeah, Sentinel will prevent your opponent from attacking any units that don't have Sentinel or your base. So they kind of like took haste from Magic with Ambush, taunt from Hearthstone with Sentinel, shielded is also from Hearthstone with the Divine Shield ability. And they really took a lot of things that are working from around the card game market,
Yeah.
and then uh kind of blended them all together, and then gave them a fresh gameplay uh method, for lack of a better term, to mess around in.
Mhm.
And the result is really fun and snappy gameplay.
Yes. Um, and trying to see where we're at. Okay, we're ending our phase now.
Looks like I've got the initiative, so I'll be making the first move this round.
And
Just resourced a card.
yep. And I think you're sitting at we're sitting at 6 resource right now, I think. Yeah. And so the deck also this video it'd be more or less just talk about the concept of this game. We're excited to give it a shot and play it. And in maybe future videos we'll do more breakdown of the cards and whatnot. But we'll talk about like what we're doing in our turns. So or our decks. So I'm playing Boba Fett, which is actually a deck that Nick had built. So I printed off all the proxies and just asked Jake and Nick, like, do you have lists you can throw together? So Nick's list is more of villains and yellow green cards, which in this game, yellow and green cards are your ramp cards pretty much. And Boba Fett
Yeah.
is like your Mecha Frieza, which has a way of resending your resources. In this case, if one of my opponent's units were to be defeated, then I can resend a resource. And when I'm in the epic awakens, I can't remember the term they're using, but when I'm awakened, I can resend 2 resources.
Yeah,
So
I think you just deploy is the term, like I'm about to do with Chewbacca
yeah,
here. Just deploy him, which means put him into play. It is an epic action, so once he's killed, he'll just go back to the leader area, and then I can never deploy him again this game. But like he was saying, this Boba Fett has like ramp from green, and then has the energy restand, uh, or resource restanding in this game. So it's kind of like playing Ramp Vegeta and Soul Striker in the same deck, to
yeah,
use like Dragon Ball terms. And then this Chewbacca deck I'm playing is more based on heroes, and it is blue and yellow. And you can see there I just played an upgrade card. That's something we don't really have in Dragon Ball, but that's the whole theme of this deck, is to basically stall until I can get Chewbacca on the field, and then load him up with as many upgrades as I possibly can, because he has Sentinel. And he'll basically like lock up the ground side of the battlefield by himself. And basically, if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, it's just like a big Voltron deck. We're gonna get Chewbacca into play, give him all kinds of guns and lightsabers and shields, and just hope he can hold the opponent back until he can close out the game.
yeah. Vader is a very interesting card to play. It allows me to look at the top 10 cards in my deck, and then I can play any combination of villain cards of a cost that totals up to 3 or less. So in this current build, most of my choices are just gonna be a 2 cost or a 3 cost. I'm not gonna maximize that, like play 3 little 1 drops or something like that, or a 2 drop and a 1 drop. Um, I want to talk about the colors in this deck. So technically, there are 6 colors, but there's 4 core colors, and then there's villains and heroes, and they're technically
Yeah,
their own colors as well because there are cards that are just villain cards and just hero cards. So you have red, green, blue, and yellow as your core colors, and then you have villain, which is kind of like the black, and then you have the hero, which is kind of the white, I think.
yeah, that's what people are calling it for shorthand,
Yep.
calling them black and white.
And so in Jake's case, Chewbacca is a blue hero. So he's blue and white, and then his base is yellow. So now those are his 3 colors he will play in his deck. Now, cards will have a color associated to them as we see with the leaders. So, for example, the card that Jake has in play is yellow, and it's a hero. Now, let's say it was a red in a hero. That card would normally cost Jake, say, 2 to play. He would have to pay 2 more resources just to play that card because it didn't fit to his color scheme. And sometimes cards can have, like, say, there are cards with there are 2 blues or 2 yellows and 2 greens. Ideally, you want to play with those. You play a blue leader with a blue base. But in this case, say if Jake were to play a 2 red card, then you have to pay 4 extra resources to play that card because it's 2 additional for every color that's not associated to your deck. So it kind of makes you think how to build your deck. In our cases, we have 2 core colors to go off of, and then any of the hero cards that fit within those colors, or just hero cards by themselves, or in my case, villain cards, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and unlike other games where you like Commander in Magic, for example, like once you pick your commander, you're stuck to the colors in that commander's color identity. In this game, you can play cards outside of the colors just as long as you're willing to pay that 2 energy tax.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a lot of decks already, including off-color cards like Rebel Assault or Spec Force Soldier, because they're 1-drops, and their effect is good enough that even at 3 energy, sometimes they're worth playing in certain lists. So, like we keep harping on, like the design of this game is really good, and they've left a lot of room open for people to brew and like experiment around with things.
And this first that's coming out really just follows the original trilogy and I think Rogue One.
There's a couple like Mace Windu is in the set, and there's a
Oh
few
yeah, there is
cards
Mace Windu, isn't
from
there? Yeah.
yeah. So there's like a few cards from outside of that, but that's like the main theme
Yeah.
of this set. Yeah.
And okay, so let's talk about your leader for a bit because when I was looking at the cards and printing them out, I was like, oh cool, I might build a Boba Fett deck. I like the idea of resending resources. And Grant, like I said, Nick built this one. I'm just playing it, and maybe I wasn't 100% like on the idea, but I felt like there wasn't enough drawing in the deck. So like I had all these resources, but I had nothing really to play them with, you know. But you on the other hand, Chewbacca is not only a sentinel, but it has grit. So when it takes damage, grit will boost its attack even higher. And you've already given it a more or less an upgrade card, which gives it a +2, which makes Chewbacca a 4, I think 11. But there are cards called Shield and Experiences in this game. Experience kind of boosts your units, and you were able to give Chewbacca 2 of those. So now Chewbacca is a 6, 13. And because Chewbacca earlier attacked one of my units, he took 4 damage, I think, from that, which now makes Chewbacca a 10, 13. And it's just like a monster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as his power increases, his health decreases.
Mhm.
But if you were paying close attention earlier, or if you know this game well, you saw that I've included a few cards in the deck that can actually heal Chewbacca. Actually, he got killed right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just really like I kind of built this leader as a goof. Like we were all sitting in Discord one night, and I was like, let's just build a random pairing. Let's build Chewbacca and Yellow. And after playing this deck for a few games, I think that as long as the format isn't too fast when the game comes out, and some early signs are looking like it might be, but if Chewbacca has time to stick in and actually get some upgrades on him, you can really go to town with him.
Yeah.
Like, you can crack the enemy's base, like Bancroft said, for 9 or 10 damage after a little bit. He's completely going to gum up the ground until your opponent can remove him. And because he's your leader, he gets around a lot of cards that say, like, non-leader and stuff like that as far as removal goes. So, it's a really unique deck that I think people should spend a little bit of time on, and maybe the community will find something cool with this lead.
So I want to point out, like we were talking about a little bit, because you boosted Chewbacca up so much, you hadn't attacked my base until the moment you attacked with Chewbacca, and you were able to put us into a tied position. And I was like, wow. I did like 3 attacks to your base, you did 1, and boom, it's tied it up. Blue has the healing mechanic in this game. There's a lot more blue. I think other colors have it, but blue is like the main one. And this Yoda has what's a seal called Restore, and in this case, it's Restore 2. So when it attacks, you can remove damage from your base. You can't remove it from units, but from your base. Now there are some cards that will specify remove health from a unit and whatnot. And there was a card that we saw that kind of bounced a couple times from the field to back to Jake's hand. The Millennium Falcon is a great yellow card, yellow hero card that it's 3 to play it, and it plays ready. It doesn't have ambush, so it goes into ready position. But at the beginning, the way the turns work, you do your turns, boom, 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 and then once both people have passed or ended their turns, you go into what's called it's either
regroup phase.
yeah,
The
regroup phase, where you will draw 2 cards, you'll place a card into your resource if you want to, and then you ready all your cards. So it happens at the end of the turn, not at the beginning of the turn. So then you go into the next turn. But during the regroup phase, you can pay 1, and if you do, you keep the Millennium Falcon in board. But if you don't, you bounce back to your hand. So like any moment you receive damage on that card, you go, yeah, you know what? I'll bounce it back to my hand. And not only that, but that keeps your hand at a more healthier state because you always have an option out of playing that card or hanging on to that card. Where I get to a point in this game where I'm like, I'll just play the 2 cards I got, and that is it.
Yeah, that's like Millennium Falcon is so strong. I think it's something you should look at in any yellow heroism deck. And here we're just remembering that this Yoda is supposed to be kept down. That's kind of the whole idea of this Chewbacca deck is to just like stall and grind the opponent down, and then hopefully at the end of the game you have more left in your hand than they do because they had to spend so much to kill your Chewbacca lead
Yeah.
that you can just take the game.
And there you managed to just kind of rack up so quickly and knock me out. But yeah, that's Star Wars. If you guys enjoy this, we do plan on doing an unboxing on camera, hopefully after sometime next week, and hopefully we'll throw this in the rotation once, every other Friday with Digimon. Kind of throw out one of these games if you guys are interested in the content. But yeah, let us know in the comments down below. And yeah, that's about it. Bye.